What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the channel and to another Overwatch World Cup roster reaction video. In today's installment, by popular demand, I will be reacting to Team UK's 7-man roster. As usual with these types of videos, let's start off by taking a look at the 7 people who made the roster. So here's who made the final cut according to Team UK's Twitter. The final roster will consist of KSP, Funny Astro, Fusions, Smexy, Boombox, Cruz, and Kib. There's a couple of things that I really noticed when I initially look at this roster. The first of which is that there's a fair amount of Overwatch League players on this team, so that's really cool. But also, this is pretty much the same team from last year in a way. Fusions, Boombox, Cruz, Kib, and Smex were all on the team last year. The third and final thing we have to point out is that there's 2 different main supports on this roster, that of course being Funny Astro and Cruz, which is really interesting in my opinion. I would say that a majority of World Cup teams opt to have 3 DPS players on their team just so they have maximum versatility at that position, but not Team UK. They're deciding to approach things in a much different way. So now the question is, why on earth did Team UK decide to have 2 main supports instead of having a 3rd DPS? Well, actually, Team UK's head coach went over all of this, plus a bunch of other things as to why they selected certain players on their roster, so I figured I'd read that out to you guys right now, and leave a link to it in the description if you want to check it out for yourself. So here's what Team UK had to say about their trials, and I quote, "For the trial process, we set the bar to apply at 4500 plus SR the past 2 seasons. During these trials, we ran a combination of 222 and GOAT. We wanted to test players' current knowledge on their role as well as putting them in difficult situations which they might not have dealt with before to see how they adapted. We had 33 players trialing in total, which we judged on a multitude of factors: raw skill/mechanics, flexibility, game IQ, team cohesion, communication, and mental fortitude." Then the coach of Team UK goes on to say, ultimately, we'd come to our final 7. Fusions, Smex, Kib, KSP, Funny Astro, Cruz, and Boombox. The majority of these players I have a strong relationship with and have worked with prior to this year, the only exception being Funny Astro. We chose the best players who would mesh well together and complement each other's strengths. We considered taking a 3rd in the damage role, but it really wasn't necessary with how flexible both Kib and KSP are. This led us to considering taking 2 main supports instead. We felt that Funny Astro and Cruz were both very talented players and each proved to have different strengths that could complement the team in different ways. Team UK is an opportunity to prove yourself in front of the world, and we felt that Astro deserved that chance to play on such a big stage. Then he finally goes on to say, "I'm sure many of you are wondering who the sub is on the 7-man roster. Neither Cruz nor Astro is a substitute. Both of them will get playtime as we experiment in our scrims leading up to BlizzCon. So what's everybody thinking here? I personally find this all to be really interesting and super cool. The fact that we got so much information revealed to us in such a small article is great. Something like this keeps all of the fans out of the dark, so I really do appreciate Coach Hayes taking the time to make this." So basically, to summarize this, Coach Hayes and the committee believes that the final 7 they selected will work together very well and bring out each other's strengths. Also, Coach Hayes has a strong relationship with most of these guys with the exception of Funny Astro, so he's going to be able to coach them all pretty well, I'd say. Then in terms of only having 2 DPS, basically, it would seem that Team UK has a lot of faith in Kib and KSP to be flexible enough to cover all of the heroes they need. And in terms of the double main support situation, it would seem that Team UK does not have their designated starter at that position just yet, and that they're going to test Funny Astro and Cruz in scrims from here until BlizzCon to see what they like better, because both of them bring certain strengths and weaknesses to the table that the other does not. But for all we know, by the time BlizzCon arrives, Team UK still might split playtime between Funny Astro and Cruz. After all, Coach Hayes really made it sound like he plans to play Funny Astro at least a little bit, since he kept talking about how he deserves to play on stage and show off his talent to the rest of the world. But is playing Funny Astro in Team UK's best interest, or would it be better for them to just play Cruz more often? It's kind of hard to tell in my opinion. I think Cruz has been pretty solid for the Paris Eternal this year, even though they've been a mediocre team, and I thought he did well on Team UK last year, and that he's a good leader. But Funny Astro at the same time, he's been doing well on the Atlanta Reigns Academy team, so maybe he will be the best answer for them instead of Cruz. Okay, that's enough about the player selection process. Make sure to let me know what you think of it down in the comment section, but now let me give my opinion on every single player, starting off with Fusions. And if you've been a long-time supporter of my channel, you already know how I feel about this guy. I love Fusions. I think he has all of the right personality traits. I think he's super friendly. He's a great leader outside of the game. He's super humble. Then inside the game, he's also a really good leader because his comms are just amazing. They're some of the best I've ever heard in my entire life. Overall, Fusions checks off so many of the boxes I want in a leader and a main tank. Now, I will admit that Fusions probably isn't the most skilled main tank out there. I think there's a lot of Overwatch League main tanks that are better than him, But Fusion's, like I said, he's just a great leader, and I think that's very valuable for any team, whether it's the Boston Uprising, Team UK, it doesn't matter. I think that Fusion's leadership is going to be valued greatly. Fusion's is the exact type of guy that you want leading your team. He knows how to tell his guys not to get too arrogant, not to get too cocky, and to focus on the task at hand, then celebrate after they get the victory. And in terms of his hero pool, well, he's a pretty solid Rhine, a decent Winston, and just a meh Orisa. In my opinion, his Orisa has been very underwhelming in the Overwatch League so far while he's played for the Boston Uprising, and I believe that if he doesn't show any improvement by the time the World Cup arrives, if Orisa is meta that is, then Fusions could be in some big trouble. But then again, maybe it's just a Boston Uprising thing. That team in general has not looked good this stage, so perhaps when he goes on Team UK, they'll do a better job of playing around him and it'll look better as a result. But either way, kind of like with last year, I'm expecting Fusions to once again be the leader and heart and soul of Team UK. Moving on to Smex, there really isn't anything negative I could say about the guy. I think that overall he's a pretty consistent and reliable off-tank. Based off of what we saw in the World Cup last year, he's a really good D.Va player, and we know that he can play Roadhog and Zarya as well, and he has a pretty decent history behind him other than just Team UK because he played for NRG Esports and most recently Montreal Rebellion. Smex popped off while synergizing well with his teammates last year in the World Cup, so I'm expecting more of the same in 2019 since a bunch of the same people from that 2018 roster will be on his team yet again. I believe that Smex will likely be one of the better players on his team this year and that he's going to do a really good job of executing combos with Fusions, whether it's Holt Hook combos or maybe Holt D.Va Bomb combos. The same can be said if they run Ryan Zarya or maybe like Winston D.Va / Wrecking Ball D.Va in any sort of dive comp. Regardless of what they play, I think that they're going to look pretty organized. Okay, now let's shift our attention over to the DPS because, as I mentioned earlier, Team UK has decided to take the untraditional approach by only using 2 DPS instead of the usual 3 like on most World Cup rosters. But according to Coach Hayes, that's okay because both KSP and Kib are more than flexible enough to cover every single hero that Team UK may need in their battle during the World Cup. Team UK is putting all their trust and faith in both KSP and Kib to get the job done on DPS, which I find to be very interesting. Let's talk about Kib first. I believe that he's a pretty solid player and that he's got a really good hero pool overall. He's shown the ability to flex onto everything, whether it's projectile DPS, he can play some Sombra, he can play your Brigitte and Roadhog. Now, obviously, he's not going to be playing those heroes anymore just because it's 2-2-2 and it'll only be on DPS, but still, it shows that he can pretty much flex onto anything his team needs, so Kib should be a decent pickup for Team UK. But kind of like with Fusions, I'm a little worried because Kib has been underperforming as of late, and he hasn't even been playing that much in general in the Overwatch League when he was on the Charge, and now when he's on the Fusion, obviously, he's just not getting any playtime. Kind of like with Fusions, I'm really hoping that none of this is going to matter, and that Kib is going to pop off on Team UK anyway, regardless of how he's done in the Overwatch League so far. Kib definitely has a good enough hero pool and overall skill to succeed, but also, another thing that's really cool about Kib is that he's a really experienced player. I mean, he's been playing since around July of 2016. He's been there since the good old days. And throughout his long journey as a pro player, he's been on 10 different teams if you count the World Cup participation from last year. So long as Kib is able to show that his time in the Overwatch League has not faltered his confidence, I believe that he'll make for a solid veteran player that'll be able to flex onto basically anything his team wants him to. Moving on to KSP, I don't know quite as much about him compared to Kib just because he's not in the Overwatch League, but what I can tell you from my experience watching this guy is that he's really good. He's been popping off for XL2 Academy and contenders. In fact, KSP and XL2 Academy did so well this year in contenders that they actually made it to the Western Finals where they would fall to Team Envy, but they put up a pretty darn good fight against them as they fell in 6 maps. In terms of his hero pool, I'm pretty sure KSP, and correct me if I'm wrong here, he's mostly known for his hit skin like his Widowmaker and his McCree, stuff like that. But also, I've seen him play Hanzo in contender, so I'm sure he can flex onto a couple of other heroes if need be during the World Cup. But what I do know about KSP is that he's more than capable of popping off at any given moment, especially when it comes to those hit scan heroes that he's really comfortable on. Oh, and fun fact about him, he was actually on Team UK last year, but he was more of the sub because Mikey A was the one getting most of the playtime. So now's his chance to actually show to the world how good he is during BlizzCon. He's not going to be on the bench, he's going to be the full-time starter alongside Kib, so they're going to be dependent on heavily to get the job done and pop off when their team needs it. So overall, I would say that Team UK is in pretty good hands with their DPS. I'm a little concerned that Kib might not show up just because he hasn't looked great in the Overwatch League, but overall, these two guys are talented and they have pretty good hero pools, so Team UK should be in good shape with their DPS. Although I personally would have gotten a third DPS player on the team just because I feel that DPS players can be so hot and cold sometimes, and if one of them is having an off day, then you definitely don't want them to stay in the game. It would be better to have somebody else come in and hopefully do a bit better, am I right? Okay, so moving on to supports, let's start off with the main support position, and who should I talk about first? I guess I'll go with Cruz. So Cruz, in my opinion, is solid. He's not the best main support in the world, but he is nowhere close to the worst either, and and I think that he's probably one of the better players on the Paris Eternal as of right now. I think he has a really good Lucio. His Mercy isn't that bad either. We know he can flex onto Baptiste and Brigida as well. I think he's got the good hero pool and that he's a very intelligent player. Not to mention he is also a very vocal player and that he's got good comms, so him and Fusion should make for really good shot callers. When comparing Cruz and Funny Astro, it would seem that they're actually pretty similar, since Funny Astro is also known for his Lucio play and his Mercy, and I'm sure he could also flex onto the Baptiste and Brigida if needed, so him and Cruz are kind of similar. I guess they just have different playstyles that enable their team in different ways. I'm not sure how Funny Astro matches up with Cruz in terms of comms, but I'm pretty sure he must be at least kind of similar to him if he's also on the 7-man World Cup roster. Oh, and don't let Funny Astro's lack of time on the big stage fool you, because he has a lot of experience and past success. If you don't recall, he was actually on the British Hurricane when they won that title back in 2018 during Season 1 of Overwatch Contenders Europe, and also recently he's been finding a lot of success on the Atlanta Reigns Academy team. During Season 1 of 2019 Contenders North America, they came in 2nd place, then they came in 4th place in the Atlantic Showdown, and now this time, in Season 2 of Contenders North America, they have been on a different level of dominant. These guys won the Eastern Grand Finals while only dropping one map the entire season, and it came in that Grand Finals game against the Gladiators Legion, and it was just one map. They were that dominant the entire time. Needless to say, Funny Astro has a pretty good resume. He knows what it takes to be a winner. Whether Team UK decides to run Cruz more or Funny Astro or have them split playtime pretty evenly, I think that the United Kingdom is going to be in a really good spot with their main support position because I think Cruz and Funny Astro are both really good. And now last, but certainly not least, we have to discuss Boombox, who is basically a hardened veteran at this point because this is his 3rd year in a row representing Team UK in the World Cup. And just like with any other year, he's probably one of their better players on the team. I think that he hasn't been great in the Overwatch League this year, especially when he has to flex onto that Ana, but for some reason, when he plays on Team UK, I feel like he just plays better. I don't know what it is about it, but he just seems to have better performances overall, in my opinion. I get the feeling that kind of like with other years in the past, Boombox is going to play a lot of Zenyatta, even if Ana is the meta, because that's what he's good at. That's what he specializes in, and I think Team UK is going to play around him as they usually seem to do. And as a result, Boombox is going to yet again be one of the stars on Team UK. My one concern about Boombox is that his hero pool isn't all that great, so if there are situations where he needs to switch off of the Zenyatta, I fear that he might not do as great as some of the other flex supports in the World Cup on heroes such as Moira or Ana, for an example. But that's my only real concern about Boombox, other than that he's been a little inconsistent in the Overwatch League this year. I still think that overall he's a pretty solid player and that he's going to once again do his country proud. So yeah, that's basically what I'm thinking of Team UK this year. Overall, I would say that their roster is looking pretty strong. I don't know if it's quite as good as last year's team just because there's no GOATs this time around and they looked really comfortable in that composition, but you never know. Perhaps they really pop off in any sort of bunker meta or dive or whatever the meta ends up being in the World Cup. I think Team UK will likely be a really solid and cohesive unit once again, so long as the players I expressed concerns about can show up and look really good. My expectations for Team UK is that they end up being a top 8 team at the very worst, and at best they could end up being like a bronze medalist. I'm not certain of how well these guys will do for sure, but one thing I am certain of is that all fans, analysts, and teams will take these guys a lot more seriously than they did last year. And with that being said, that is going to wrap up yet another Overwatch World Cup roster reaction video. If you guys did enjoy this content today, then I would appreciate it if you could hit that like button and subscribe to my channel if you're new. And don't forget to let me know what you think of Team UK 7-man roster down in the comment section, and feel free to let me know what other teams you'd like me to react to as well. As always, thank you all so much for watching today's video. I really do appreciate it, and until next time, this is ATP, signing out. Peace.